Why do you think there is a hesitancy from different sides of the spectrum to kind of come together? Are we just doomed to this kind of fractionalized society where everybody's doing their own thing and you have 16 different denominations of Jews?
What I'm suggesting is that we find ways to get together where all of us want to get together.
Correct.
And, we're not coming because we feel obligated to. We're coming because we want to.
So he says, so what's your job? So he says, well, my job is to take thick sticks from the old men, polish them up, and give them to the young people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I see that as being my role. Like, my role is whatever solutions people are finding that may be attractive aren't very sturdy and solid and stable. I mean, the things that people are finding in today's world to find meaning in, to find causes in, and people want causes, and that's a good thing. Like, people are actually driven by meaning. But the things that they're finding are weak at best and laughable at worst, right? The Torah is as solid and stable as it gets.
We're living our lives in a way that Hashem wants us to live, I believe, by being honest. We happen to keep kosher. It's the judging, it's the ego that we're not supposed to have influencing us that's causing the problems.
There has to be some objective measure of what's acceptable, what's good behavior, what's not good behavior. So I think there have to be two standards. One, like our verse says, an action, you can say it's good or bad. A person, you can't judge a person based on their actions. You have no idea who the person is, right? So for example, if I would say, well, driving a car on Shabbos is not something that Hashem wants. That's a statement. Now, that doesn't mean that a person who drives on Shabbos is a worse person than a specific person who doesn't drive on Shabbos, right? Because we have no idea what it means for that person to drive, what the struggle is for that person.
I see friends of mine talking down to their children in front of me that embarrasses their children. I have friends of mine whose wives belittle their husbands in front of other people, okay? And I see lots of other things like that. I'm just going to stick with that for now to make this point. And the first thing I think of is, if they had just studied Torah, their relationship would be so richer because they would be supporting their wives and their kids instead of competing with them because it's their ego that's making them angry. How dare you talk to me this way? How dare you say that, right? And so forth. So it all comes back to education. If our community can invest in Jewish education, you're not going to get the secular community to come to Torah Academy. But if we on the secular side, if we can find a way to instill the love of Judaism into our kids so that they want to learn Torah in some way and change their behavior so they don't talk down to their kids and they don't talk down to their spouses and embarrass them in front of people, the Torah says it's like stabbing them in the back.
Right. When kids become religious, oftentimes it could be an unhealthy relationship there where, the parents are, seen as less than. But I have to say, I've seen it work well. I think people need to look at observance that way, connecting to Hashem that way. It's not, again, we can measure actions. There have to be objectionable measures of actions. Is this action good in Hashem's eyes, not good in Hashem's eyes? But judging people, absolutely not. And I wish there were more schools that had educators that were able to educate in this way. I've seen some excellent people in my own lifetime that were able to do this. My in-laws, my parents are excellent examples of this, of people who are able to bring people along. And I've unfortunately seen horrible examples of this, of people who turn people off because they didn't understand this. And they themselves had a very shallow, black and white view of what Judaism is.
What are the key things that we're going to be judged on? What does our Torah say?
I think ultimately it's to what extent the decisions that we made in our lives were with Him in mind.
Okay.
I think that's the answer.
I thought you were going to say, don't do to others as you wouldn't want done to you. I thought you were going to say raising children that are good. What are these things that I'm thinking of?
Those are important principles, but the world of mitzvahs is simply a bedrock of what life looks like. How well a person performs, ultimately what a person is all about is his choices and why you choose what you chose. as opposed to what you do. I can take two identical lives on the outside, and they look identical. You know, the same observance of Shabbos and the same amount of tzedakah and the same amount of acts of kindness, and identical. And one person is great in the eyes of Hashem, and the other person isn't, because one person did it because he wanted to do the right thing, because this is what Hashem wants from him, and the other person did it for selfish reasons.
I was in Jerusalem during the Intifada twice. Massive suicide bombings all over Israel. And Marc and I witnessed a suicide bombing. We were the first ones to the scene. The suicide bomber blew himself up. Thank God he didn't hurt anyone else. And this is, remember, right after 9/11, and it was very easy for the journalists all over the country to call the victims of, or the perpetrators of 9/11 terrorists. Okay? Right. They're terrorists, right?
Right. You
kill innocent Americans, you're a terrorist. But if you kill innocent Jews in Israel, you're not a terrorist. You're a freedom fighter, you're a militant, you're a combatant, and they wouldn't call them what they are, terrorists.
I see so much hate against Israel. I feel like I am swimming upstream. I get a lot of hate on the text line at WCCO Radio. They call me Genocide Jordana.
Oh, wow.
Jordana, they send me texts, why do you love murdering babies? You love spilling blood. I love that. I do not love that. I do not want innocent people to die anywhere in the world.
Sure.
But to Minnesotans' credit, there are many Minnesotans that support Israel, that understand the truth of this situation, that know this is an existential fight for not only our survival, but between good and evil, evil being Hamas terrorists. So there are people out there that understand that. And I hold on to that hope because there's so much negativity out there surrounding this conflict. And I have to remind even my husband sometimes, there are people out there, and we are on the right side of this conflict. But it's a struggle being on the air every day.
Do we really think we're going to be able to fight back to win a holy war against a dedicated religious, spiritual foe with conventional means?
I agree with you, okay, but we have to do our part, okay? We can't sit home and say, God, win this war for us, right?
Correct.
So we have to do our part. And yes, we believe that God is in control. I believe that God is in control because he set up the rules of the universe, okay? He set up the physical rules and the spiritual rules, and runs the world that way.
Are you quoting the rabbi back to himself?
No, because
Did you learn that from him?
Because there's different.
Argued about this.
There's sages that have differences of opinion on this, okay, of how God operates, okay, and that's okay, right?
Let's ask him.
Listen,
he's listening. Right?
Yeah.
Who's right here? May the person who's wrong be struck by a lightning bolt.
Oh God!
Again, the beauty of the Talmud, right? We've got, brilliant sages, rabbis arguing with each other that live 2,000, 3,000 years apart, right?
Of course.
So, in my view, we still have to do our part.
I guess my question to you is there anything that I can do, from my perspective, to get this message across? Or there's just nothing to do, or you could tell me that I'm dead wrong. But, this is how I see it, right? It's a spiritual thing, primarily. And yes, there are practical things that we can do. There are diplomatic things that we have to try and attempt. But to think that that's the thing that we're relying on, it's just not. It just won't work. What advice would you give me?
When I am feeling at the end of my rope, when I am feeling the world is against us because I've been on social media too much, or I've gotten so much hate from the listeners, or Marc and I have had a conversation and we're watching the news and seeing how demonized Israel is becoming, that is what I hearken back to. I will learn. Or when I read the Megillah yesterday, I thought, this is such perfect timing. Purim came at the perfect time because the miracle of Purim, I know it lasted 9 years, but then it turned around over a banquet, over the night of a banquet that Esther had with Haman and Achashverosh. So, and it's funny, you say it sounds silly to go to secular Jews and say, don't worry, God's got this.
Right.
But I do that with my children, with my husband, and with myself. I say that at the end of the day, this looks awful. We are losing the war in PR. Can we ever win this war? We will win it, but we will never win it. And what I mean is we will win. Israel will exist. The Jewish people will continue because we have and we always will. Right. But they will still hate us. Right. In every generation, they rise up against us. Right. We thought it wasn't going to happen. We've lived in relative, safety since the Holocaust. We weren't alive during the Holocaust.
Right.
This is our Holocaust. This is, I mean, it's not to the same level, of course, but this is a pogrom.
Right.
This is a modern day pogrom. So we're going to win the war, meaning Israel will exist, the Jews will be safe, we will lose lives, we will lose the PR, we will never win the war of public opinion. No, the world will never love the Jews, they will never love Israel, but that's, like you, at the end of the day, it comes down to Hashem. And that's why we will win. And it gives me, as a secular Jew, comfort to know that. I am a believer, and I know that we're going to be okay.
I don't think that there's a disagreement in thinking that Hashem, that God is going to be in control of everything, and that's what matters most, and the idea that we have to do our part.
Right.
Okay? If you go back to the Six-Day War, right? I don't know who the brilliant Israeli was that decided to take out all their air power, to bomb all their airports and destroy all their air power, and that's why the Israelis were able to win that war in 6 days.
Sure.
And they preemptively did this.
Right.
Okay, so once they controlled the airspace, they won the war.
Right.
Now, did Hashem put that thought into that person's head? Of course. Okay,
Right.
so it's happening at the same time.
Right.
But we have free choice. We have to do our part. God's going to interject when he has to. He's going to split the sea when he has to. But he's going to let us play it out. Okay, 6 million of us died.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
did he save 6 million of us?
Right.
Okay, so are we being threatened and we should be realistic about it? Is God going to save us all? No.
Right.
But in the end, yes, God is going to make sure that the Jews influence, and they have.
I suggest we stop caring. Let's stop caring what somebody in Wisconsin who doesn't care about this conflict thinks. He doesn't have skin in the game, and that's okay.
Right.
He's got to fight his own battles. This is our battle. Let's do the best we can. Let's support each other. Let's know that Hashem is in charge. We're going to be okay. Let's stop caring, because we're not going to win. They're never going to like us.
The fact that they hate me means that I stand for something. Now, it's unpleasant. It's very difficult to deal with, right? But the day that they stopped hating me and started hating somebody else, that's the day I get really worried. Because that's the day I'm like, wait, you no longer see me as the bastion of morality in the world's conscience? I'm not the one that you want to hate, right?
Interesting.
So it's part of the package of what it means to be Jewish. On the one hand, we are the world's conscience, which means we have to stand for values. When everybody else has a certain standard, we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. The downside of that package is they're going to hate us.